The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, I was in Las Vegas this weekend for a conference along with General Michael Flynn and the greatest mayor in New York City history, Rudy Giuliani, at a conference sponsored by the Gateway Pundit. And I was both honored and gratified when Vice President J.D. Vance sent this message.
Roger Stone, who's a very, one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
I could not be more flattered or pleased, and it's a great way to start today's show. I must tell you that as someone who was sentenced to 40 months in a COVID-infested prison on the basis of a hoax, not because I actually did something wrong, but in my case because I refused to buckle to pressure from federal prosecutors to testify falsely against President Donald Trump, I must tell you, I never thought this day would come. Let us pray that Attorney General Pam Bondi has the courage to stay the course and now prosecute the lawbreakers who have been fully and completely exposed by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, in the largest single dirty trick in American political history. It is nothing less than an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government was used politically to try to remove a duly elected president. Many good investigative reporters, John Solomon, Lee Smith, Paul Sperry, and others, had written most of what we know today, but now you have it from an authoritative and undisputed source, the actual documents that the perps left behind. The Department of Justice is now aggressively pursuing options to hold accountable any federal official for their actions in the Russian collusion hoax, also known as Russiagate, sometimes known as Obamagate. This is welcome news to those who become cynical about our two-tier justice system, in which Republicans are fair game for prosecution for often made-up and fabricated crimes, while Democrats are insulated and they've been spared for real crimes that they committed. There is now an authorization for a federal grand jury to investigate and hold accountable any federal official and non-governmental accomplices for conspiring against Donald Trump, both before and after the 2016 election, right up into this very day. In other words, this is a continuing seditious conspiracy that began before the 2016 election, was used to try to undo the results of the 2016 election, involved what I believe was the hijacking of the 2020 election, and then in 2023 and 4, the effort to use a tsunami of lawfare to bankrupt Donald Trump, to throw him in jail, to keep him off the ballot in 50 states. But it's very significant that the most egregious and almost final act in this illegal conspiracy was the raid on his palatial home in Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago. That means, of course, that the evidence against the perps can be shown to a Florida grand jury. It means that the trial for those who are ultimately charged can be held in South Florida as opposed to, well, the District of Columbia, where there is not a single unbiased or fair-minded judge, and where drawing a balanced and fair jury is virtually impossible. Every day when you think it can't get worse, well, that's when it does. Today, we learned that a top secret email that has been declassified by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard shows that the then Director of National Intelligence, General James Clapper, dismissed concerns by a National Security Agency Director, Mike Rogers, that the NSA had not appropriate time or resources to validate the Russiagate conspiracy details. The former NSA Director, Mike Rogers, sent an email addressed to General Clapper, former FBI Director James Comey, and former CIA Director John Brennan, sharing his concerns about the NSA's lack of, quote, sufficient access, adding that NSA officials aren't fully comfortable saying that they've had enough time to review all of the intelligence to be absolutely confident in this assessment. That, of course, is the assessment that Russia interfered in the 2016 elections on behalf of Donald Trump. Clapper, in his reply, said, "We may have to compromise on our normal modalities, but now more time is just not negotiable." It should go without saying as to why Clapper felt the need to move so quickly on the faulty and fabricated Russiagate intel. It was because he was executing the deep state's partisan hit job ordered directly by Barack Obama himself. It was a key meeting in 2017, January 5th to be specific, when Obama convened a meeting of all of those gentlemen, including Susan Rice, the national security advisor, to discuss and plot tactics and strategy to undermine and disempower the duly elected president, Donald Trump. Starting with Obama, those at that meeting turned out to be the familiar cast of characters, including FBI Director Comey, CIA Director Brennan, the aforementioned NSA Director James Clapper, who, after leaving government service, would go to teach ethics at Vermont College. No, I'm not kidding. Joe Biden was also in the room, again, as I said, Security Advisor Susan Rice and former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates. Director Gabbard, in releasing this new information, said, "The leading figures in the Russia hoax have spent years deceiving the American public by presenting their manufactured and politicized assessments as credible intelligence." The email released today reinforces what we've already exposed: the decision to compromise standards and violate protocols in the creation of the 2017 manufactured intelligence assessment that was presented to President Barack Obama was deliberate, and she said it came from the very top. Clapper's own words confirm that complying with the order to manufacture intelligence was his words, team sport. If Clapper wishes to avoid jail at this point, he ought to go beyond lawyering up, and perhaps he should consider turning on his compatriots and turning state's evidence. I think that's a strong possibility. In the meantime, we also learned that the FBI Director, Kash Patel, uncovered emails from Obama's Deputy Attorney General, Sally Yates, in which she ordered FBI agents to shut down an ongoing investigation into the Clinton Foundation as a pay-to-play operation. It was a report by investigative journalist John Solomon that uncovered a smoking gun email from Obama's Deputy Attorney General, Sally Yates, explicitly ordering FBI agents to shut down a criminal corruption probe into the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative. Thanks to Judicial Watch, the American public was made aware of Hillary Clinton's private email server. We've now seen the declassified email in which a top Clinton aide says that HRC, that's Hillary Rodham Clinton, had approved the false narrative of blaming the Russians for interfering in the 2016 election as a way to, quote, distract attention from the email investigation. Now, Hillary Clinton and her husband conducted official business on a non-government server so that she could hide her Clinton Foundation pay-to-play operation when she was the head of the Department of State. According to emails that have been obtained by Judicial Watch and released, Hillary Clinton gave preferential treatment to Clinton Foundation donors when she was the Secretary of State. In fact, Judge Royce Lamberth previously said that Clinton's use of private emails was one of the gravest modern offenses to governmental transparency. Now, the investigation, quietly running in New York, Washington, D.C., and Little Rock, was reportedly a fully predicated criminal case examining whether Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, was running a pay-to-play influence racket. FBI agents had reason to believe that foreign nationals and other deep-pocketed donors bought access and favors from the State Department in exchange for massive contributions to the Clinton Foundation, all the while the Obama Department of Justice looked the other way. At the same time, then FBI Director Andrew McCabe, whose wife took campaign cash from a Clinton ally while she was running for the state Senate, personally attended the meetings to solicit the funds, allegedly locking down the investigations, ordering that no action could be taken on the Clintons without his personal approval. 4 separate U.S. attorney offices under Obama were approached by FBI agents for help with subpoenas, grand juries, and evidence gathering, but 3 of the 4 refused outright. The most damning piece of evidence is the document uncovered and released today by FBI Director Kash Patel. In it, Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates distinctly instructs the FBI to, quote, shut it down. She is referring, of course, to the Clinton Foundation investigation. This effectively granted the Clintons immunity from further scrutiny during the 2016 election cycle. So it is now reported several prosecutors have now stepped forward and are willing to cooperate with both the Congress and the Trump-aligned investigators. The FBI Director, Patel, reportedly has more explosive emails from the Obama-era officials, which he intends to turn over to lawmakers. We're going to cover all of this right here in the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks. To get the latest on the burgeoning Russiagate scandal, tune in to us every single day, and we will bring you the very best curated news about this scandal. I am praying for justice. So many of my friends say, yes, I've heard it before, but nobody seems to get arrested other than, well, me, General Michael Flynn, and of course they tried to take down Donald Trump. But here we are. It is living proof that Jesus Christ can do anything. It is my faith that got me through this incredible, what would you call it, challenge, I guess, and I live to tell about it. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back to tell you more.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. I communicated with the president last night. He is, of course, heading tomorrow to Alaska, where he will meet with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, in which many think will be a final end to the bloody conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Even before success in that endeavor, just looking at his record, I think we see why this man deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. He reached a settlement between India and Pakistan. He got a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. He ended the conflict between Egypt and Ethiopia. He ended a long and particularly bloody war between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. He ended a war between Cambodia and Thailand. And then just days ago, he announced settlement and a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. He's also ended a conflict between Kosovo and Serbia. So I still think his greatest accomplishment lies ahead. That would be a ceasefire and an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. The Russians, of course, released a statement saying that the president of the United States had made a proposal that the Russians deemed acceptable. So I'm ready to say that peace is at hand. I think it remains to be seen whether Zelensky, once he is cut off from our U.S. tax dollars, and the allies in Europe who seem to be very anxious for us to pay for this war, but don't seem to be anxious to pay for their fair share of it, will continue in their hostilities. I suspect we are very close to an act that will earn the president the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, that, of course, is a private operation. It's Norwegian-based. And for some strange reason, they gave the Nobel Peace Prize to President Barack Obama, even though, if you check this online or with any artificial intelligence application, he dropped more bombs than any president in U.S. history. and that's a fact. Meanwhile, Melania Trump, who I've known since 1987, is threatening Hunter Biden with a $1 billion defamation lawsuit after the drug-addicted hooker enthusiast claimed without evidence that Melania became acquainted with President Trump after the two were introduced by Jeffrey Epstein. Since I was there in New York at that time working for Donald Trump, which is when I first met Melania Trump, when they were just dating, even prior to their being engaged, I know this to be a bald-faced lie. Melania Trump's attorney has demanded that Hunter Biden immediately retract the false, defamatory, disparaging, and inflammatory statement, a letter that was sent to Hunter Biden by the First Lady's lawyers said, failure to comply will leave Mrs. Trump with no choice but to pursue any and all legal rights and remedies available to her to recover the overwhelming financial and reputational harm that you have caused her to suffer. The Daily Beast already retracted their story that made this claim and issued an apology to Melania Trump. That tells me that they don't want to be sued. Hunter Biden will likely do the same unless, of course, he's too cracked out to be able to sensibly respond. If he does not apologize, Hunter Biden will very likely lose whatever he has left among his ill-gotten gains, the stuff that he received due to his shady Ukrainian energy deals and his other money laundering operations, not to mention the sale of his incredibly impressive art. I'm Roger Stone. You're in the Stone Zone. Don't go away because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. New York Attorney General Letitia James, one of the most belligerent, Trump-hating Democrats in elected office, is finding herself in an increasingly precarious situation where she is no longer above the law and shielded from her crimes after her efforts to destroy Donald Trump and keep him out of office for a second term were unsuccessful. We already know that a special counsel has been named to prosecute James for the series of mortgage fraud incidents that go back 22 years. Ed Martin has been appointed by the Attorney General to head that probe. Also, the Department of Justice announced a federal grand jury investigation last week based on a civil fraud case that claims that James filed against Trump and his companies in 2023. It is believed that James violated the rights of Trump and his adult children in rigging the verdict. However, it is James' behavior involving billions of dollars in illicit money that was funneled to terrorists under her watch that dwarfs either one of those scandals. The Standard Chartered Bank of New York allegedly hid over $9.6 billion of illicit payments to sanctioned or terrorist-affiliated entities that were not previously disclosed nor part of prior sanctioned settlements with the United States government. In other words, they knowingly and frequently violated their obligations to self-report. Whistleblowers came forward and produced over 40,000 emails that showed that the Standard Chartered Bank currency trade records over the last several years that the bank denied existed. These funds eventually were found in the hands of entities connected to Iran and Hezbollah, allegedly used by China to buy illicit Iranian oil with U.S. dollars. The staff of the Attorney General, James, was made aware of this scandal in 3 separate meetings in early 2024, but they all looked the other way. It is her neglect in this case that is criminal in nature and must be aggressively exposed and prosecuted by the Trump administration. To understand how we got to where we are, I think it's probably helpful to look back at President Barack Obama's entire term. It was in 2009 that Obama Attorney General Eric Holder oversaw the ill-fated Fast and Furious gun distribution tracking program that was supposed to be targeting Mexican cartels. Actually, this resulted in the death of U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry. When summoned to testify before Congress, Attorney General Eric Holder refused to comply with a congressional subpoena for certain documents or testimony, leading to his being held in contempt of Congress in June of 2012. A first for a sitting Attorney General. But you notice that Eric Holder was not charged and jailed as Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro were when they refused a congressional subpoena. I received a subpoena from the January 6th committee, and I fulfilled my legal obligation to show up on the appointed day where I asserted my Fifth Amendment rights. Not because I had anything to hide, not because I did anything wrong, but I had firsthand experience with the way that people like Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell or Robert Mueller twisted your words into a process crime. So I fulfilled my obligations. Of course, there was also the scandal in which Lois Lerner, the IRS director of the Exempt Organizations Division of the Internal Revenue Service, blocked the approval of tax exemptions for some 250 conservative nonprofit groups with the words Tea Party or Patriot in their filing names prior to the elections of both 2010 and 2012. That prompted a May 2013 House Oversight and Government Reform Committee hearing in which Lerner pleaded the Fifth Amendment, evoking her rights against self-incrimination. Of course, on September 11, 2012, the anniversary of 9/11, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, Islamic militants attacked the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi, Libya. The U.S. effectively stood down on resolute defense measures, leading to the death of 4 Americans, including the U.S. ambassador being killed. It was almost immediately followed by a massive cover-up orchestrated by Obama's UN ambassador, Susan Rice. During her whole term as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton refused to comply with State Department protocol requiring that all communications be conducted on secure government communication networks. She insisted on using her own private server located in her residence in Chappaqua, New York, but that put America's national security information at risk. It is believed that the Chinese, the Russians, the Saudis, the Israelis, and many others had full access to Hillary Clinton's illegal, illicit email traffic. An FBI investigation found that Clinton had used an insecure server, destroyed evidence under subpoena that included 31,000 emails by bleach-bitting her hard drive storage devices, and she destroyed or hid 13 cell phones and other communication devices. Federal law, specifically 18 U.S. Code 1519, prohibits the destruction or falsification of records with the intent to obstruct justice, with penalties of up to 20 years in prison and substantial fines. Now, we know that FBI Director James Comey gave Hillary Clinton a pass, incredibly suggesting that the evidence did not meet the legal threshold for prosecution. And today, thanks to FBI Director Kash Patel, we learned that the FBI aggressively shut down the ongoing investigation into the Clinton Foundation pay-for-play schemes. Then, of course, in 2016, Barack Obama completed the nuclear weapons deal in which he secretly transferred $1.7 billion in cash on pallets that was not part of the public deal that was disclosed to the American people. Most likely, this money was used to bribe the Iranians into making a deal, yet President Trump at that time said, and I agree, there was no reason to believe the Iranians had shut down or stopped their efforts to develop and build a nuclear weapon. So it's important to connect the dots and not forget the other key players in Obama's national security team. In 2014, under the leadership of John Brennan, the CIA hacked into the computers of the Senate Intelligence Committee staffers, and when brought before the Senate Intelligence Committee to explain himself, Brennan initially denied the wrongdoing. Later, he was forced to backtrack and admit that his testimony had been false when the CIA's Inspector General produced definitive evidence confirming the unauthorized access. That is one. It was in March of 2013 when General James Clapper was providing testimony before the same Senate Intelligence Committee, and he was directly asked about whether the national security apparatus collected data on the American people. Clapper actually told a bold-faced lie, saying that the NSA did not conduct surveillance or collect and store any type of data on hundreds of millions of Americans, when in fact, as Edward Snowden would prove in his disclosures, there was an aggressive data collection process. So Clapper lied, but without consequences. Then in October of 2020, only 3 weeks prior to the presidential election, Brennan and Clapper were among the 51 former intelligence officials to sign a public letter to be placed in the media nationwide, suggesting that the New York Post's damning report on Hunter Biden's laptop had, quote, all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. Of course, now we know, thanks to the great reporting of the New York Post and the efforts of the Marco Polo organization, all of that has been proven false. And the worst of Hunter Biden's email from his laptop have been confirmed to be authentic and shocking. And then, as I said earlier, the most critical date in the Russian collusion hoax is January 5th, 2017. This is when Barack Obama himself convened a White House meeting to discuss and plot the tactics and strategy to undermine the duly elected president, Donald Trump. Starting with Obama, those at the meeting turned out to be the familiar cast of characters, including Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Vice President Joe Biden, who thoughtfully suggested that my friend General Michael Flynn could be charged with violating the Logan Act. That would be unauthorized conduct of a foreign policy, simply because Flynn had communicated with the Russian ambassador prior to his being sworn in as the national security advisor. Something, by the way, that had been done by Susan Rice without any charges or controversy. There's nothing illegal with Flynn's communications, and the claim that Flynn flirted with the idea of loosening or removing sanctions against the Russians is proven to be completely and totally false. So let's hope that President Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has the courage to stay the course and prosecute the lawbreakers to the full extent of the law wherever the deep state ruling class can be found. To me, the restoration of clear, consistent, and uniform standards of justice could be the greatest accomplishment yet of the Trump administration, creating a legacy in the League of the Founding Fathers, and notably one of my favorites, James Madison, who wrote in the Federalist Papers, specifically paper number 51, that justice is the end of government. It is the end of civil society. It has ever been and ever will be pursued until it is obtained or until liberty will be lost in its pursuit. Achieving rapid progress in the restoration of equal justice under the law, in other words, recalibrating the scales of justice so all Americans are treated equally, will help restore America's moral capital and open the way for a natural, national, spiritual revival. Such might be the cause for a true celebration on the upcoming 250th anniversary of America, which comes in the year 2026. In the meantime, the United States is deploying air and naval forces to the southern Caribbean in a new operation targeting powerful Latin American drug cartels, now labeled as global terrorist organizations. President Donald Trump directed the Pentagon to prepare military operations aiming to disrupt cartels such as Mexico's Sinaloa and the Venezuelan's Tren de Agua, groups that have administration formally designated as global terrorist organizations just earlier this year. The deployment will include several P-8 surveillance aircraft, at least one warship, and one attack submarine. These assets will operate in international waters, as well as serving as platforms for precision strikes against the cartels. Officials say that the mission is expected to unfold over several months, building on previous military support for border security and anti-trafficking operations. Earlier this year, 2 warships were already deployed to reinforce the United States' efforts in the region. The Trump administration frames this as a matter of national security, part of a broader push to curb drug trafficking. This heightened presence in the Caribbean signals a more aggressive U.S. stance against the narco-terrorist threats, potentially setting the stage for expanded intelligence operations and, if needed, targeted military action. I've known Donald Trump for 50 years. He is not a man to be trifled with. He's a man who says what he means and means what he says. And I believe the assault on him, the attack on him, and the attempt to murder him in Butler, Pennsylvania, gave him not only a certain serenity that he's protected by the Lord, but also a greater sense of urgency that he only has 4 years to turn this country around, and he's using every single minute of it. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We've got a little more politics for you. Shifty Adam Schiff has been caught red-handed. The question is, will he pay any penalty? Whatever you do, don't touch that dial because, well, we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox is coming to Hulu. In 2007, Amanda Knox was studying abroad in Italy. She had no idea her dream would turn into a nightmare. Inspired by the actual events of her wrongful conviction and 15-year fight for freedom, watch the new Hulu original series, The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox, on August 20th. Streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. After last night's live show, when I was about to turn out the lights, I got a text message from my colleague at 77 WABC and the Red Apple Audio Network's Greg Kelly, sending me a picture of a woman named Fiona Hill and asking me whether this was the most evil woman of all time. Indeed, I was the one who exposed Fiona Hill. She had worked for George Soros, and she was a Soros mole, a plant inside Donald Trump's National Security Council. She claimed in a book that she wrote that she attended the Women's March in 2017 to protest Trump's treatment of women. Only months later, she was hired by the National Security Council, and she later testified against Trump in his bogus impeachment proceeding. I remember her incredible interview on the air with Leslie Stahl, where she very wide-eyed said she didn't understand what was happening, that she was completely and totally non-political, and that she had been subjected to death threats after I exposed her in an interview as precisely what she was. So, to my colleague Greg Kelly, yes, I nailed it. I think there is, however, no greater huckster, con man, and charlatan than Adam Schiff, the U.S. Senator, formerly a congressman from California. Recall that Schiff insisted repeatedly for 3 years that he had seen more than circumstantial evidence of Russian collusion with Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. Of course, he never produced anything of the kind. We now know, according to documents that have been declassified, that the disgraced former Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff was actually involved in a willful effort to leak classified documents in an effort to embarrass and to try to begin the indictment against President Donald Trump. These leaks, according to a whistleblower who's now come forward, were calculated to harm Trump's presidency during the now discredited Russian hoax. Now, this was first reported by the Biden Department of Justice Inspector General in December of 2024. where they reported after investigation that Schiff and his sidekick, California Congressman Eric Swalwell, had willfully and openly spoken in an all-staff meeting about a plan to leak classified information derogatory to President Trump, and stated that the leaks would be used to indict him. The whistleblower reported that he objected, calling the actions unethical and possibly treasonous, but was assured by Schiff not to be concerned because, he said, they would not get caught leaking this classified information. So not only is Adam Schiff under investigation for mortgage fraud, where he said that his condominium in Burbank and his home in Potomac, Maryland, were both his principal legal residence, getting a tax break in both states, and also being able to acquire a lower mortgage rate and a lower insurance rate. But now he has a much more serious problem. He is clearly under investigation for the leaking of classified documents, which, by the way, is a far more serious felony than the one they framed me for, lying under oath to a congressional committee when I was there voluntarily, and there was, well, nothing to lie about. Adam Schiff, pencil neck, watermelon head, call him whatever you like. I say he's completely and totally busted, and this is Kismet. This is justice. This is what I have prayed for, as President Trump said on Truth Social, in his exact words, that Adam Shifty Schiff approved a plan to leak classified information to damage Donald Trump. There it is. The president called it out, and I say to you, if it's Schiff, flush it. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. We are here every day, 5 days a week, to report on the latest political developments. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?